The Tonight Show with Afzal Akram. Tonight is Tuesday evening and it's that time of the week where we have a conversation with a studio guest on a topic of our choice. It's that time also when you can call in, and during the show there will be a number at the bottom of the screen. Please do call in and share your views. Today we want to tackle a topic around racism. Some people say perceived racism, for some people it's actual racism, but I also want to talk about Meghan, Harry, or as people are calling it, Megxit, if you like, on was it racism on the way that Meghan has been treated, or was it something else? And with me in the studio today to share some of these views is Munish Chopra Evans. Munish, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And Munish, when I say racism to you, what does it mean?
So I moved to this country when I was 4 years old, and I moved from Indore in India. Racism to me is about in being in the playground, having in an almost totally white school, being picked on, being told, you know, can I say the P word? Well, them using the P word,
Yeah.
saying P, go home,
Yeah.
and you know, and having a guy. The school were really good about it. To be fair, they had a guy who would follow me around to make sure I wasn't picked on. And then we used to get stones. This is in the 80s.
Okay.
We used to get stones
You're
thrown.
giving your age away now. But
Yeah. But we used to get stones thrown and bricks thrown through our windows. We lived in a fairly white part of the West Midlands. And for about a dozen to 2 dozen times, we had bricks thrown through our window.
Wow.
That's racism to me. Racism is also on my way home when I saw a gang of skinheads, I would run the other way.
Okay.
And, you know, there was a time where a family member of mine, I don't want to say who, but they got beaten up by them. That's what racism is to me.
Okay.
And it was a different time. The 70s and 80s was a rough time to grow up in Britain.
Well, I mean, I grew up around the same sort of age. I mean, I suppose.
Can I just say that is so not true? You are much older than I am.
If you say so, if you say so. But 70s and 80s was when I was growing up, and in school at those times. But, you know, maybe I've been lucky. You know, the sort of stuff that you've actually described,
Yeah.
I personally have not witnessed.
Yeah.
Okay? I know my dad was once beaten up, and he said it was skinheads.
Yeah,
I was a young kid, I can't remember how he came in. But then my dad's generation would turn the other cheek and they would walk away and they would try not to get involved and so on. And then I suppose it was my generation, as we grew up, we went to the schools, we went to the colleges, and, you know, we educated ourselves and, you know, I'm born here, as far as I'm concerned, I'm as British as the next person.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't turn the other cheek.
No.
And so if somebody said something, we would answer back. And I suppose that's where you call the fight back.
Do you know what the difference, I think, for us is? You were in London.
Yeah.
And whenever we visited anyone, our cousins or friends in London, or even Leicester, I felt so jealous because in the same street you'd have your uncle, your aunt, you'd have your
the
network.
numbers were larger in London.
Yeah,
That's where it all started.
and you had your temples. We were the only white. We lived in Solihull, and at that time, now it's changed and it's really good. But we were the only, and we knew 300-400 houses away was a Bengali family. We knew them, and then about 1,000 houses away, the other side was a Nepali family. We knew them as well, and that was it. And there was no one else, no Pakistanis, no black people, no Chinese. Yeah. There was three families.
My dad used to say that as well, that they all knew each other across the country because there wasn't that many people. Now, in our own families, direct families, there's like 50, 60, 70 people.
Yeah.
Let alone the extended family, if you like.
Well, when we used to go down in the car, honestly, we used to look at people, and if there's a Pakistani or Indian, we'd almost stop the car and go, "Hey, bhai sahab, kahan se ho aap?" And it'd go, "Pakistan ya Bharat," and we'd be like really happy about it. Those were different times. I was lucky. I went to a school that was supportive, but then when I went into my junior school, it wasn't like that either. The teachers didn't know how to support. You know, if somebody called us the P word, they wouldn't come down on them like a ton of bricks. Now, I'm married to a teacher. And, you know, I know from personal experience, racism is treated so seriously now in schools. No one steps over it. And that there was an incident in the school, it's in Ilford, and they're so hot on it.
Sure.
That wasn't the
people
culture.
Understood now.
Yeah.
Also, policies are put in place, and it's not. I mean, obviously, we're both from this Asian subcontinent. But
Yeah.
racism can be against any race from anywhere in the world.
Absolutely.
And the same processes apply. There was a time, you know, that we thought we were coming out, and racism wasn't so much. But over the last 3-4 years, it seems to have, you know, reared its ugly head again, if you like. How much of that's to do with Brexit, do you think?
Oh, I laugh only because, look, I think it's not that Brexit has caused racism.
Yeah.
Some of the conversations that we had during Brexit got very polarized very quickly. And I come from a family which is split on Brexit. And I remember one half of the family was calling the other half racist. And they were like, how can you do that when, you've got to stand with the immigrants? And the other half was saying, yeah, we do stand with the immigrants, but we also want better opportunities for people who've grown up here. So I think it just polarized
The immigrants voted both ways as well. There
Exactly.
wasn't that everyone's going to vote
in our
one
family,
way.
it was both ways.
I mean,
Yeah.
my view on that is...
But it did empower people to say things that you couldn't say for a long time. And that's why homophobic crime went massively increased after Brexit. I think there was something there that came out, but I think it was more the way the thing was structured, Brexit referendum was structured.
See, I think personally, I think it's more than that. I don't think it's Brexit. I think it's actually social media.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's Brexit. I don't think it's anything else, whatever. I think what's happened is we've become emboldened with social media. We've become what I term as keyboard warriors, where we're sat at home, fake profile accounts, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
You're giving
Snapchat, or whatever it is,
Apple.
yeah, right? People have created these fake profiles, they haven't got their pictures up, and they feel nobody knows who I am. And do you know what? I can say what I want to somebody, and no one's going to say anything to me. And because I'm in the confines of my room, nobody can see me. Yet if they're sat right next to you, my language, they wouldn't have the balls to say it.
No,
Yeah?
absolutely.
And I think that's what's caused it. And the explosion of social media has been quite big over the last 3-4 years, and has actually been at the same time around Brexit.
Yes.
And so therefore people are saying, and when people say to me, I said, well, I don't think it's Brexit. I mean, I've had some good discussions with people on Brexit. I think it's the social media. And the way the algorithms work on social media is that, and I think this is unfortunate, that the more you like or dislike something, the more of that you see in your inbox, in your newsfeed, yeah? And therefore, if you are what I would term a racist, and you have racist tendencies, you will suddenly start being suggested to add other people with similar thoughts because of the way the algorithm pick up on your posts and your comments and so on. And suddenly you're a community of a few thousand people, a few hundred people who all think alike, and suddenly you think, the whole country's like this because everyone around me is like this. Some of the stuff that happened with Trump in America.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing.
Same thing. And therefore, for me, I think it's more social media.
To be honest, the one thing that I do agree with that, and I think South Park had the beautiful episode on social media, and not just Yell.com, which used to be a big thing, and those of us who've worked in food know how horrible not social media, but these tracking sites that tell you how good they're awful, but also how the rabbi was the main person because he was using his anonymity. Loveliest person you ever met, but once he got in front of a keyboard, he just venom used to go out. And I think the satire of South Park explains that really well. The only thing is that goes against that. When I was at university, I remember going to Norway during their referendum on the EU. And this was, 5 or 6 years after that, it split their country in half. And what they decided was don't ever have referendums on this. Also Switzerland as well. So back in 95, I think it was.
What do you mean don't have referendums on what?
The European issue just splits all countries, not just Britain.
Okay.
The Swiss, it divided family, the Norwegians, and it became a metropolitan Oslo against the rest of the country. The same thing happened here. You go to Switzerland, when they had their referendums, there was no consensus about this. And when you talk to political analysts in those countries, they often say, no, we're not going to talk about this again.
Yeah, but then surely that's the nature of a referendum. I mean, you only really have referendums for those big topics where you know that the communities are divided. Because if public opinion was 90% towards one side, you don't need a referendum. The government knows, this is what 90% of people are thinking. God, if I go against that, I'm going to get booted out. The politicians will only choose a referendum when actually either they're sure they're going to win it, okay, which Cameron made a bad decision,
no, he did,
okay,
he did.
Or they're so undivided, they're thinking, well, do you know what? I don't really want to make this decision. You make the decision.
So I totally back the idea on this issue of having a referendum. Our politics wasn't represented. Either Labour Party or switched to Tories. And the president had been set in the early 70s when Labour had a massively split cabinet and they took it to a referendum, a confirmatory referendum.
Is this when we joined?
The European Community, just after, yes.
Right,
so they'd already set the precedent.
Right.
And unfortunately, and it was an issue. We had complete failure in our politics. We weren't able to reflect within one party, apart from the Liberal Democrats, what were the choices and the opinions. So you had to have a referendum. But the problem with that referendum was people painted the other side to extremes. So if you're in favour of Brexit, you would paint it as some racist. And if you were in favour, and you're right, because it's a bipolar issue.
I mean, we moved on to Brexit, but
Yeah.
I want to get back to racism. But it's through those conversations now that I feel people just throw the word racist out
Yep.
like any other word, whereas it used to be really strong. Whenever you used it with somebody, it was really strong. Somebody had to have really have some strong views and said some strong things. Now, if you disagree with somebody, you say, you're racist.
Yeah, but you only have a certain number of characters. So you got to get your point in straight away. I mean, the thing is, back in the 90s, we had Stephen Lawrence, the murder of him, and there was institutional racism.
There was, yes.
And for me, the problem now is, look at the criminal justice system in the United Kingdom. We have still got racism there, whether it's the police system or whether it's the sentencing. The inequality.
Do you want to share some examples?
Well, I mean, this is general, but the point I'm more making here is those issues are not being dealt with because we call everyone a racist now. It's become such a cheap word to use. And I feel that a lot of the times there was, in terms of particular examples, there were cases of, particularly young offenders institutions, where the violence on Asian young people and the injuries and then the suicides is completely disproportionate to the numbers. And what we've had with the police, with Stephen Lawrence, and we haven't even got to tackle that totally, we need to do that in our prison service, particularly our young offenders areas, to look into the racism that really goes on there. I've forgotten the young man's name. I think he was a Sikh man who was murdered by his cellmate. It was a few years ago. But we're not really looking at those. We're looking at these other racism accusations, which to my mind don't, whether a celebrity goes on Question Time and talks about whatever he talks about, asked by a university lecturer, we're more bothered about that than the lives of our young people that we're incarcerating.
I mean, you mentioned the police earlier. Would you say, and let's talk about the Metropolitan Police, because that's who we were talking about when it came to Stephen Lawrence. Would you say they are still a racist force? Or have they moved on?
So what I'd say was in the 80s, when we had bricks through our windows, the police said it wasn't a racist incident. And they went round to 5 or 6 people in the local area. And this was after we had a dozen boulders through our window. You know the rockery plants? And then bricks, they were the ones coming through our window. And we had French windows. And the metal had bent because these people had put such force. And the way our house was, only my window faced the front.
But then, you aren't talking 70s, 80s. I mean, we have
so
moved
compared
on,
to that,
so
it's a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think things have come along.
Because my experience is if you go in now and you report something, then it is actually marked down as
exactly.
It's recorded as a crime to do with race. And once it's recorded, it's then investigated as such. And the way they investigate it, I believe, is if we've got any police officer watching, please do call in and tell us we're right or wrong. But I believe it's then looked at in a different way.
So back in Stephen Lawrence's case, I think you had a bit of the case where you rounded up the usual suspects. That culture is, from my mind and the way I've met with the police, it's a lot better, There are issues with policing in this country, but I don't think that racism is the top problem now that it was before. And I know where I'm getting from Stop and Search, I'm from Walthamstow, we've had a lot of problems with a lot of black teenagers. But when I listen to the parents of those people that are murdered, they no longer see Stop and Search as a problem.
Okay.
That we did 10 years ago.
Just hold that, because we'll talk about Stop and Search in a moment.
Okay.
We're just going to go for a short break now, viewers, so do stay with us. And when you come back, we're going to still look at the term racism, but I want to talk about Stop and Search and a few other things alongside it. Please do call in and share your views. Tell us, have things moved on? How are you experiencing? How has it been handled? If you've got any tips and guidance, please share those with us. So we shall see you on the other side shortly. Back to the Tonight Show with Afzal Akram, and today we're talking about racism, but we're having a general conversation around what the causes of racism are, why some people feel it's okay to openly talk about it. The word gets branded everywhere. You know, you're in a debate with somebody, whether it be Brexit or something else, and people now just turn around and say, "You're racist." I don't even think what's behind it, you know. Whereas I know, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, the word wasn't actually branded that much around. Yes, it was there, but it was where actually somebody had physically, you know, said thing or done something or whatever. But now I'm, you know, hearing it in conversations all the time. And Munish and I were talking before that, you know, social media is probably to blame part of it, because it's actually encouraged people to say things in the safety of their own home, if you like, or they feel that they can't be identified because they haven't used their correct details. But before the break, we were just moving on to stop and search. I don't want to go into the causes of knife crime, because we actually did a show on that last week. But stop, whenever you mention the word stop and search, it doesn't take too many more words before the word racist or racism comes into the same sentence. And, you know, people are saying it's a racist policy. What's your view?
I don't agree with that. I think stop and search is absolutely vital for the police and for knife crime. And when you go out into the black community and meet the parents of, doesn't have to be a victim, but just parents of young black people, they are championing stop and search. And they're asking for it to be used. I think 10 years ago, you're probably right. I've been stopped and searched about 4 times in my life. Although that's been for...
I hope you were given the cleanest.
Do you know what? It was for Section 44, which is terrorism. Because I've always got a beard on.
In many ways, that's even worse.
It is worse. 4 times.
Right.
But I think stop and search is a tool. And the reason why I don't get so annoyed about even that is because that is how they're going to... You know, it is a tool that they're using.
So, I mean, it's very important. You said parents of young black people are actually supportive of it. Then who are the people that are complaining about it?
For me, this is, with a lot of racism, it's often white politicians you have who 10 years ago this was an issue, no doubt, and they are using this as a wedge issue or playing the race card themselves. Racism is a huge issue in our society, but it's not helped when we cry wolf over issues that actually aren't racist. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at. And we have a huge knife crime epidemic. And all of the black parents you speak to, time and time again, they want stop and search.
I think
and particularly in Walthamstow, where we've seen it, the victims' families are coming out and saying, I don't want to name names, but that is a big thing that you see.
Well, look, as parents, you know, I'm not my parent, I've got young children, and, you know, until, I'll be honest, on the way from school to home, it is a case of whether I admit it or not. I do glance at the watch quite a few times if I'm home. You know, they're not home yet. You know, I think in every parent's mind, there is that issue, especially in London. However, I would have no qualms of my children, or me, for example, being stopped and searched if, and this is where profiling comes into it, and they say stop and search is not fair because they're going to stop more black people than anyone else. But then, you know, put yourself into the shoes of police and let's look at statistics. This is what I say, you know. If the statistics are showing you that crime is in a particular area is being committed by a particular community in the most part, then logic says that that's where you need to start to actually bring the numbers down. I mean, now, on the negative side of that is that if you stop more people from that community, you are going to find more people carrying knives or something, and therefore more people will end up into the prison service and so on, because statistics tell you that more searches you do, the more likely you're to come up with something.
Yeah, look, I don't follow the second part of what you're saying. The first part I totally agree with. Look, I don't mind being stopped and searched 10 times on Section 44, which is more about terrorism, if that stops a major terrorist attack.
Yeah.
I don't mind. You can stop me 100 times if that does.
But also, if you're stopped in the right way with the courtesy and explained why, and it's done properly, which is where the police then need to be properly trained.
But the profiling is always, at the moment, the society we live in and the issues we have, they are always going to stop people like me who are generally bearded or freshly shaven Asian man. I'm always in a rush, I can tell you. They're not going to ask me to look at my religious background, who I'm married to, and say, well, actually, you know what? I don't think gay Hindus are the problem here.
Yeah.
So they're not. And I think the police have a really difficult job to do. But also, it is for anyone who is taking the responsibility, like the police or parents. The buck does come.
So do you think it's for us within our own communities that we need to educate our own communities, and we need to ourselves come and do something as well, as a way of, we need to get away from the word terrorist equals Muslim, or the word knife crime equals young black man. We need to get away from that sort of stuff, because that's what the perceptions are being created by media or by other aides. Or is that factual?
I don't agree with what you're saying.
Okay. What bits don't you agree on?
Okay, the black community has moved on from stop and search being a race issue. A lot of that's down to the amazing work the police have done, and also because they know it works. It is the white politicians who are using that as a way, because they haven't moved on from what was happening 10, 15 years ago when it was a real issue. We know stop search.
Alongside, I know the Muslim community haven't moved on.
That's a different issue.
Okay,
it's a different
from the
issue.
same concept, and feel that they are being victimised, and maybe they are where the black community was 10 years ago linked to stop and search. And like you, I've no issues being stopped and searched because I know I haven't committed anything. As long as there's no terrorist act.
I think they are. They've evolved differently. Those two issues have. Unfortunately, I don't feel I'm in the demographic for knife crime. And even though I live in Walthamstow and walk around, like St James's has been really hit by knife crime, I've always felt safe. But this is the first time I've lived in an Asian majority area. Everywhere else I've lived, I stuck out like a sore thumb. With the terrorism issue, it's totally different. There is a problem of perception being created. I think that's fair enough. However, the one thing I'd like to come to is we really need, as a society, to stop wanting to always be a victim of things. For me, that doesn't work. If you look for racism everywhere, you will find it everywhere. Because that innately in social science, when you look for something, you find it. And it disempowers you, because the message you're sending is that as a young Asian person, or as a middle-aged now Asian person, I like to think myself as young, you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't be there. That's not your place. We rob our young people of the chance to actually break down those barriers, to empower, enable them to do whatever they want to. We can't live in fear. That's what I'm trying to say.
But it is that positiveness, isn't it? I've got a friend, nameless, who actually finds racism in anything and everything. Okay, whereas none of us know what's happening was there, and he'll find a way of saying, "Well, hold on, that's racist, or that's anti-Muslim, or that's that," and it's always that negative issue around that. There's a problem with what somebody's doing in authority. Now, I believe this person's actually got a problem with authority,
right.
rather than there being racism or whatever. And this individual hasn't, it's fair to say, achieved much in life. But I think part of that's been down to their own mentality that stopped them, because whenever something's become difficult, it was easier to blame somebody else or something else than saying, well, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I haven't trained enough, maybe I haven't studied enough, maybe I haven't done this. And it's the attitude of, when you're pointing a finger at somebody, there's three pointing back at you.
No, I think people should live their lives with 100% responsibility for themselves. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't racism, and that doesn't mean that there aren't issues beyond your control. But if you fully empower yourself, then you're going to have a great life. And, as we say in Urdu, koi ro ro ke rehta hai, koi has has ke rehta hai. I think people make the choice that they, for non-Hindi Urdu speakers, that some people live crying and some people live laughing. That's a choice.
Yeah.
And
it's the half glass full, half glass empty.
But what's bad about it is that if we tell our young black people and our young Muslim kids, oh no, don't do that because you'll have a backlash, I think that's robbing them of their futures. I know there's some of it, like my parents' generation used to say, do as the Romans do. So we were never allowed to wear overtly Indian markings outside our house. We were never allowed to have Diwali lights.
But that was sort of hiding away from the risk of race,
But now we live in a different society. We're more engaged and more diverse, and people accept it.
Yeah.
People love their Indian food and they love their Indian festivals.
But having said all that, you know, it's still important that where you see
Absolutely,
actual racism
absolutely.
or you face actual racism, that you actually call it out and report it. You shouldn't turn the cheek.
That
You
is
shouldn't
as
think
that is
and you
as
should do it.
important
Yeah.
as not as because real racism must be tackled. That's why crying wolf, what I said earlier, is actually a disservice to when real racism happens. And I think, you know, we've, as I said to you, when you get bricks through your window, that is real racism, and you're the only person who's ever had it in that area.
Well, if you're the only Asian person in the whole street
Yeah.
and it keeps happening to you, then, you know, you've
And
got to
yet
put
the
it down.
police were
Yeah.
refusing to call it racism.
Yeah.
Now that actually, my parents solved it in a really beautiful way. There was an estate around where we lived, and they went to every house, knocked on the door, and they said, look, this is our problem. And this is what's happening. This is how many times it's happened. We're really scared. We're not going to move away, but and in a way, somehow, something magical happened, and that community sorted it out, and it stopped happening.
So was that, so in a funny way, that is integration. It's talking to people, it's explaining to people, and when you're talking to people, people realize, hold on, he or she is no different to me. We're talking the same language, we have similar issues, kids are at the same school, because normally racism or other prejudices arise out of the fear of the unknown.
Yes, the fear
You don't know any
and
better.
to make someone the other.
And the other, whereas if you are integrating, you are mixing, you are talking, then that fear, disappears.
Exactly, and I think the thing about that is you show your humanity.
Yeah.
So look, I'm worried about my family.
Yeah.
We got this big boulder through our window.
Yeah.
Come on, and this is not where we want to live. And we're opening our hearts to you, and what are you going to say? And I think that that's with any of these isms. But one of the things is sometimes you don't get along with everyone in life. That's the nature of it.
All right, Monish,
Sorry,
let's move on.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Meghan and Harry in particular now. Okay. It's been reported, I mean, we all know what's been decided now. You know, Meghan and Harry have decided they want to have a private life. They want to live part of their life in Canada and part of their, part of their time in Canada, part of their time in the UK. And they were hoping that they could push back on their royal duties and have some privacy.
Yep.
Okay. Now, being in the royal family is not so easy of having privacy, especially when you have a HRH title. And
Or even when you don't.
or even when you don't. And you know, the royal family have sorted it now in the essence that Harry's wishes have been accepted by the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen. They will lose their HRH titles, so they won't be called His Royal Highness anymore, but they'll be Meghan and Harry, Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They will not do any duties for the royal family, and in fact they've also agreed to pay back the public purse for the money that was spent on doing up the residence that they have in the UK because they want to carry on living there.
It's about 2 million, I think.
2 point something million, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which is good, fair enough. But
also,
a clean line has been drawn.
On top of that, they want to cover their police costs in another country as well. Which
I've
they're
not
being
heard
very
that.
generous.
I've not heard that,
But
let's move from that because that's for somebody else to decide how that's going to happen. Where I was leading from this was that lots of people have said, or lots of people are talking. I talk to people saying, why has it come to this? Is it a case of they wanted privacy? Is it a case, I've had people say to me, well, look, she was a famous actress. She loved going to showbiz parties. She loved dancing, going out, this, that, being photographed and that. But being a royal daughter-in-law, you can't do that. And it reminded me of Asian families, if you like. All right, it reminded me of Asian families. Oh, yeah, it's okay to do that. You just can't be seen doing that. And of course, if you're royal, there are certain standards, there are certain etiquettes. And I'm sure she would have been told all this before she married. But, you know, when you're in that love, you want to become part of these things, we can manage it. Now, how much of it is that? It's a question, okay? And how much of it is that she's been treated so badly, okay, that actually both her and Harry are feeling that the only way to get away from the sort of tension that she's been getting is to lead a more private life and actually, in many ways, leave the UK and go and live in another country where they're not so recognisable, where they're not such a big story, and how much of it is. So I'm setting the scene because we're going to go to a break. And when I come back, I want to give us your views, and hopefully viewers are calling, share their views. But I've heard some, stories on both sides of it. And I'm just trying to see how much of which it is, and is this an Asian household, the royal family that's being played? So stay with us, viewers. Go and top up your cuppa, and when we come back, we'll talk Meghan and Harry. Welcome back, viewers, to the final part of the Tonight Show, Vavz Al-Akram. Today we're talking about racism and how it's changed over the years. Why do people feel it's okay to throw that word out in mid-sentence now, every other sentence? And before the break, we were starting to talk about Meghan and Harry and whether their scenario is due to racism. So, Munesh, in your view, do you think Meghan's been treated the way she has vis-a-vis how Kate was treated because of racism?
No.
Quantify that.
Okay, and look, I don't think the comparison is fair between Kate and Meghan. They're very different, but Meghan and Princess Diana, those of us who are a bit older remember how she dominated. I think that's a better comparison, and actually Diana got treated far worse than Meghan ever did. They were the superstars of their time. This lady has been a not Hollywood, but an American TV actress. And in South Asia, we know we don't have royalty now, but our Bollywood or our TV actors are our royalty. And the same is with America. Their culture actually quite mirrors that. Hollywood and TV actors and actresses are treated like royalty. I think Meghan was naive because she doesn't come from a British background. She didn't understand how vicious the tabloid press is. And at the end of the day, when Brexit's happened and it's been signed and sealed, we've got to move on. And we go back to what we always talked about in British households over our Kellogg's cornflakes. It is the royal family. And everyone thinks they own the royal family in Britain because, it's the monarchy. And if you went back to the days of Diana, the way she was treated was 10 times worse. I mean, she's only had a year of it. Diana had it throughout her entire life, and ultimately it might have killed her.
Well, let me challenge you on that too, Vavz.
Okay.
The first point I'll challenge you is, okay, fair enough what you said, her background, where she's come from, so on, she didn't understand the British press, didn't expect it, so on. But Harry knew what it was, so why is Harry saying it's racist? Because actually, Meghan's probably not said it. Harry's the one who's been saying all this, publicly, I'm sure they've discussed it, they both feel it. But Harry's born here, grown up here, in the royal family, educated as a royalist, he's in line to be the king,
Yep.
So he's seen it with his mother as well, the press and so on,
He was very young.
He's still very young, but he's had that attention from the British press as well. He's seen other royal members of the family have that attention.
Yep.
Why is he saying it's racist then?
I think the thing is, I disagree with him on this, and that's as simple as I can put it. But when you have someone like Meghan who had her own life, she had created an amazing, a good career around her. Amazing, maybe a bit strong, but a good career around her. She was her own person. That is very difficult for that person to compromise and come in to a family situation. And any South Asian person watching can totally relate to this. It's like an extended family. When a girl comes into an extended family, she's often...
You're talking about Asian families.
Asian families.
Yeah.
She's often blamed for everything that goes wrong. And it's a really difficult situation. And it depends how much that person can compromise. And I think for someone coming from Meghan's background, it's very different to William and Kate. Because remember, Kate had pictures of William on her wall growing up. Because William was a heartthrob. He's still a very handsome man, but he was a heartthrob then. And she grew up in a British middle-class family. And the one thing that makes me laugh when you compare Kate and Meghan, do you know how much abuse from the tabloids Kate's mother got? She was called a wicked witch of the East. They were really gunning for her because they felt that she was trying to be the power behind Kate and trying to muscle in on the monarchy. I just think people need to have the correct comparisons. But I have seen the BuzzFeed article that compared the two.
This is what I was going to move on. Okay, my second challenge was that, we've all seen articles in the newspapers of very similar situations. And the one that comes to mind is when they were both pregnant. And when Kate was touching her pregnancy, her womb, it was, oh, look how caring she is, how she's looking after the baby and so on. And Meghan was said, well, stop touching yourself so many times around here, yeah? And that was one. And there were other examples where, you've had papers next to each other where both are doing virtually identical activities or saying the same thing, but Meghan is always reported as being a negative, whereas Kate's always been reported as a positive. Now, if that's not racism in the media, explain it.
I don't think it is. Look, at the end of the day, Meghan was a high-profile, internationally known actress. I used to watch Suits as well. So she had much, and the thing the British press love is to take people down a peg or two. She had much further to fall than Kate. The worst thing about Kate was her mother spending 40,000 on this Christmas do that William was invited to. So she didn't have so much to fall. So I think the British press loves to have a go.
Yeah, but the same. I mean, maybe this is journalism, and maybe the regulatory bodies need to do something. I still find it wrong. All right. I mean, like you, overall, personally. I think there's a bit of racism, but I think part of it's something else, and I'll come back to in a moment. But when you have identical stories being reported in different ways, it's very difficult to say it's not a certain element of racism in there.
Can I just say...
okay, and you might say they're trying to bring her down, and that's the only way they can do it, but surely they can find other ways than trying to find an identical story to what's already happened with Kate and giving it a negative slant rather than
why is it racist when what we're talking about is two different individuals? And why are you playing something on the race?
Simply because Meghan has one of her parents is from the black community.
But I don't feel that's a determining factor on why they're treating her different. I'm saying she was practically a TV Hollywood starlet, and they want to pull her down a few, and her fall is bigger to see and probably more fun to see from in terms of the papers and the way they do it. Because look, at the end of the day, you need a free press. And once you start imposing restrictions on it, it stops them investigating all the things that happened. Look at the issues around Prince Andrew without making any accusations. That would never have come out unless we had such a vibrant press. In countries like South Asia, which we're both from and we know, that would never have made the newspapers because rich and powerful people can pull strings. So I think there is a danger.
Having a free press is great, but having a free press that's reporting the same story in two different ways, I disagree to. And this is coming from a point, I'm in the media myself, yeah? Okay? Now, from that perspective, I'm going to disagree with you. I think there was element of racism in reporting those stories. However...
But you haven't shown that. You haven't shown the racial element.
Well, I can't tell what else is different between the two. You're saying it's because she was a celebrity.
Yep.
And I'm choosing to believe, well, actually, no, I don't think it's because she was a celebrity.
And not just celebrity, but her personality.
That's
one is a diva, and the other one...
Well, this is the second part. I'm going to agree with you a little bit now, is their reason for moving and doing the other thing, I don't think is due to the so-called racism, personally. I personally believe, I wouldn't call her a diva because I don't know her, I believe...
nor do I. This is what's reported.
Okay. I believe that she, and to some extent maybe Harry, wanted the lifestyle of a celebrity, okay, because that's where she's come from. She used, most of her friends are celebrities, and she found it very difficult, maybe her and Harry, I won't say just her, found that very difficult being in the UK, doing royal duties, to be able to go out to a nightclub, let your hair down, because the press will follow them everywhere. Yeah, and therefore I think racism maybe is just being used as an excuse in order to spend time over in Canada. Maybe it'll be US after Trump's moved on because she doesn't like Trump. That's why she's not going to America at the moment.
And have to wait a long time.
And when she's there, and of course, when it started off, they wanted to have their cake and eat it because I believe they wanted to keep the HRH titles, do part-time royalty duty, and have the benefits of privacy as well. Whereas now it's actually a line drawn, and therefore I believe moving is probably is an excuse. I think that is a bit of them wanting a bit of a freedom, being away from the royal family, being treated like celebrities and not like, because there is a difference between celebrities and royalty.
And I think this comes back to what we were discussing at the first part when we were talking about social media and racism. Throwing the racism card at someone is about the worst thing you can do at the moment. Harry had
But it seems to be the easiest.
and the easiest, but it is the worst thing to destroy your detractors. They're racist. And for me, Harry had a very tough childhood. He lost his mother when he was very young. And he's almost, I don't know, and they've talked about his depression. He's openly talked about it, and a lot of that stemming from it. What's happening to his wife for him, and I totally see it. For me, I can see that he's being put back into that mind frame, so he's not able to escape.
Well, he's seeing his wife being attacked by the media the same way his mother was, and he's bringing back bad memories.
Exactly, and for him to use the racism card this is the way I see it.
See, he sees it as racism and not her being a celebrity.
No, but that's why he's pushing back as hard as he can, which is absolutely his role and responsibility. Now, in terms of this whole thing, for me, if you don't want to take on the duty, unfortunately, the perks go with it.
Yeah.
And I think they've been quite mature about it, to be fair. They're going, they're going through this, they're renegotiating it. And at the end of the day, you only live once. Well, God, and if you have to set a new trend, then why not, if that's going to make you happy?
Well, look, I think in the end it's been handled very professionally in the right way. I think Her
particularly
Majesty,
the Queen. Can I just say
the
that?
Queen, hats off to her.
Yeah, exactly.
I think she's done a great job.
And she's a 90-year-old woman. She doesn't need this heartache.
And she's been that tough mother-in-law, if you like, yeah?
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
and say, well, no, this is how we're going to do it, because the halfway house was never really going to work. The tabloid were always going to be looking over the shoulders, accusations. This way, at least they get their wish, which is we want some privacy.
And can I just say one thing? What you forget, though, about the Queen is when her sister, Princess Margaret, what she went through in her life, that has scarred the Queen a lot. And she knows that because, look, the first in line to the throne, brilliant. The second line is a spare. And that's been the history of the monarchy from time immemorial. Yeah. She knows how it destroyed Margaret's life and how she wasn't able to live. Now, some people can find their way. Princess Anne is a perfect example. She does her duty and she does it well. She's one away from the spare, and yet she's carved out a really amazing role for herself and even her children have. But it's tough.
Yeah,
it's
hard. I mean, Harry was, I think, number 6 now, wasn't he? In line?
No, technically, yeah, falls. But he was the second.
Yeah.
And then when William had other children, he falls. And now
down,
we've even changed the rules, so he falls further because it doesn't matter if it's. So that's why I think for Harry finding cause now, a lot of his causes were linked to his mother. This is a man who, it just seems to me, hasn't necessarily got over the pressures.
Okay, look, like the community, like the population, we're probably not going to disagree on this one. We're going to have views on it. I think it's an element of both, if you like.
No, we need to stop using racism on everything. That's my point.
I agree. You know me. I tend not to look for it, but there are some times when you're faced with facts, it's very difficult to say otherwise. But Munish, look, time is running along. Okay. Thank you for joining me today to discuss this. Viewers, we were talking about racism, and even though Munish and I have had a bit of a light-hearted conversation on it, for those who are affected, it's a very serious topic.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you're affected by it, please do go online, have a look at all the help that's supported by various charities. The important thing is talk to somebody, report, especially if it's been physical or verbal, report it to the police, report it to somebody in power, do something about it, don't sit and just worry about it. And Meghan, Harry, wherever you are, good luck. We wish you all the best, and we hope you do spend some time here. And nobody needs to be forced away for whatever reason from somebody. And it is your choice. And good luck to you. But viewers, thank you for joining myself here with Munish today on the Tonight Show. Hope you have a fantastic week, and hopefully I shall see you at the next show. Take care. God bless. Have a great week.